Juliette Whittaker, welcome back to the Running Effect podcast, this time with Olympian to the name. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you so much for having me back on here.
We briefly talked before the podcast, and then I was like, let's just save it for the podcast. So you started classes 2 weeks ago. I know a lot of friends are halfway through their semester. Do you like or hate Stanford's schedule? Hot take here.
Ugh, it's so nice in the summer, like by the end of the summer when everyone's like going back to school and I still have like another month until class starts. But then when it hits like mid-June, it's just the worst because we're like, doing like at nationals last year, I had to take like 2 3-hour exams in my hotel room the day before the 800 final, which was just not fun. And I was so jealous of everyone else who has literally just been like training and just like hanging out at school and we're like still in class. So I don't know. It really depends on the time of year, but right now I'm not minding it too much. It's nice that we just kind of started.
Does it feel cool to be back on campus after, on paper, you probably had one of the more exciting summers out of a Stanford student. What's that been like being back on campus, being back with your friends who I'm sure you missed?
Yeah, it's definitely quite the adjustment, like going from like, all the highs of like Paris and Olympics and all of that just back into like the classroom. But it's been so nice and honestly very like grounding, just to kind of be back with all of, my friends and kind of doing what I love just in the day-to-day life. But it's also just exciting being back at Stanford because obviously, we had quite a big group of people go to the Olympics this past summer, both like alum and current. So it's been fun to like kind of see some of the other current students while I've been here, just like walk around the dining hall. I'm like, oh my gosh, like saw you in Paris and like kind of fun things like that. So
What is your like favorite sport to watch or follow that's not running related?
ooh, I would normally say swimming because I was a swimmer long for a while before I started running. So I've always gotten a lot of excitement watching that. But this past summer when we were in Paris, I actually went with my sister to watch gymnastics, the women's team gymnastics final. And it was so cool to watch. So honestly, that might be my top one now.
Speaking about Stanford more generally, you're back in, cross season. Does it feel nice to change things up and not have to think about hitting race pace reps for 800, or are you like dreading the tempos? I remember talking to you last summer and you're talking about how you wanted to have another chance at cross and try to get better at some of the longer stuff. How are you feeling as we're talking in October?
Yeah, it's definitely nice not having to do, really insane, like insanely fast 200s or 400s or even 600s. But it definitely is a different type of pain. Like not as fast, but so long and just like, yeah, the tempos are still not my favorite. But I've been enjoying some of the like the 1K interval workouts. And yeah, it's just been fun to kind of, do something I'm not as used to. It feels like a lot less pressure in the workouts and even like the races. Like I did our first race like 2 weeks ago, I guess it was in Missouri. Like I kind of just like tempoed it, but still went and like kind of experienced all of like cross country. And it was just honestly a very like freeing feeling to be like at a track or a cross country meet and like not, have all this like insanely like external pressure and like expectation. And just kind of fun to switch it up. And it reminds me a lot of high school, which I missed a lot, honestly, like just like the team aspect, like running for, something so much greater than myself and like being, running in the race and like seeing two of my teammates next to me was just such like a fun kind of comforting feeling that I kind of missed from high school. So yeah, it's been fun.
Speaking more to that, how special do you think that team aspect and environment is in cross, and how much do you feel like it reinvigorates you coming off of that longer break post track season, getting back into the swing of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I don't know, team sports have always just like kind of been really exciting to me, and I feel like most times people like don't see running as much of a team sport, but um I beg to differ. It's like quite the opposite. Like I think it's so team even like in the track season, honestly, like obviously you're not like I mean, there are like team scores, but it's not the same as cross country team scores. But even then, I feel like it's so like team oriented, and I feel like our team does a really special job of like really focusing on the team and focusing on like, running, no matter how hard it gets in a race, like running for all the girls behind us and all of our teammates and everything. And I feel like when we see, one person do really well, like it just makes us all hungry to do well as well. And yeah, I feel like coming off the cross country season, um, it gets me really excited to go into the track season because it's like okay, I did all that. That was fun and all, but now we're into like my jam, you know? Like now I can go try and do some stuff on the track.
What are some of your favorite elements of a trip with the team? So Missouri was the first meet of the year. You guys will have a few more meets before ACCs, I guess, changing conferences,
Yeah.
and then regionals, nationals. But you also have a few other years. You're now an upperclassman, which is crazy to say, a junior. So you've had a few years at
Yeah.
this thing. What are some of your favorite moments of these trips with the team to these cross country meets that aren't like the race or really running related?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I feel like most of my favorite memories from all of these meets are not running related at all. I feel like it's always like just like the small little moments that like even just like in the travel days, like it's like who you're sitting next to on the flight. Like I'll like be put with someone that I'm not normally like talking to and like, have great conversations or like just kind of, I don't know, sometimes our travel days are very long, especially when we have to go over to the East Coast. So kind of those long, like dreaded travel days, just somehow we fill them with so many fun memories of just like fun conversations, fun games that we play to keep the time to, go faster, like all these kind of smaller moments that make the travel trips just really special with our team.
Actually, funny story here. Before I knew you, yeah, this was definitely before I knew you because we talked like the end of last summer. I was
Hmm.
on. There were so many like I feel like Olympians and U.S. champions on that flight, but I was on the flight. So I went to the U.S. championships last year with Hoka, and I was on the flight from Eugene to San Francisco, and you were there, but it was before I knew you. And there were like a
Oh,
bunch of other
really?
people. Yeah, there were a bunch of because I remember thinking I was like, oh my gosh, Juliette Whittaker's on this flight. Like it was so random. And then it was like San Francisco to Austin, and you got to get off at San Francisco and go back to Stanford. But
Oh,
so
that's so
that's a funny
funny.
memory because it was like it was. I think I reached out to you probably towards the end of last summer, so I didn't
Yeah.
know you, but it was like
Yeah.
you, a bunch of other people. It's always funny to see. I actually question about this. I'm sure people see like the backpacks where it's like Stanford cross country track and field. What's the atmosphere like in airports when you guys just like completely take over the gate? Do people come up to you? Do they talk to you, or do they just like leave you alone?
Yeah, no, people usually are always like asking us questions, especially when we're like first just walking onto the flight. Like there's just a long line, like especially in the track season, like a long line of like 50, 60 people all decked out in Stanford gear, and everyone on the flight is always like, where are you guys going? What team are you on? It's funny, like the guesses that we get for team, like if you can't see like the track part on our shirt and it just is like Stanford, they know we're athletes. A lot of times people are like, are you guys the volleyball team? Which is so funny to me, but I think it's because we have like a lot of tall people, especially like in our mid distance group of girls. Like we just have so many people who are so tall. So people always think we're volleyball, and we always laugh at that because we're like, no, we're not that coordinated.
What's the go-to Juliette Whittaker travel fit? Does Stanford have like a kind of like a dress code you have to follow, or is it pretty free flowing? You can wear what you want.
No, we usually have to match, and it's usually like is our like sweatsuit set that we get for each year. Like last year was like a gray set. This year it's like black sweatpants, and then like this red zip up and like the same shirt. Like we all kind of have to match, and then like Nike shoes. Yeah, so not too much creativity with that, but
What's the favorite color of Stanford? Red, black, or white? What would you prefer? Whether it's travel
ooh.
day or like racing, if you had to choose.
Last like the past 2 years our two uniforms have been red and black, and my favorite is the black. Like I just love it. Like it makes me feel really like fierce and confident. But this year we actually also got a white uniform, which I'm super excited about, so I feel like that's gonna become my top. Red's honestly the bottom.
And the black one, is that the one with the? That's not even the S. That's the Stanford, right?
Yeah,
Typed out
it's
in
just
white. Yeah, that's
Stanford.
clean.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
clean.
it's just so simple and nice. Like I don't know, I love it.
Let's go back to a year when I talked to you. I forget what was discussed in that conversation. I wouldn't be surprised if the Olympics were brought up. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. If I was to go back to that version of Juliette and say, you're going to make the Olympic team, you're going to make the Olympic final, you're going to be seventh in the world, run 157, would she have believed me or no?
Definitely not.
No?
No way. Yeah, I still don't know if I believe it, and it happened. Yeah, I don't know. At that time, I mean, yeah, I remember when we talked, and I feel like you probably asked me for my goals for the year, and I feel like I probably was like, it'd be amazing to win a national title, but we'll see about that. Um, so to now like have done that twice this past year and then also done more is just crazy to me. Yeah, I was not expecting it. Obviously dreamed of it, obviously, really wanted it. But it's so much different to dream of something than for it to actually happen. So for it to come true like that, yeah, it's just still shocking to me.
A lot of this stuff comes down to getting it done on the day. And like, I think we probably talked about it in the last conversation. We could talk about this conversation, the 2023 US championships, where you had that fall right before the line, didn't even really get the chance to have the chance to make a team. And so many people will knock out training, will knock out lead up races, will knock out everything. But if you can't get it right for that like minute 58, 59 seconds on the final of the US trials, like it doesn't matter, right? You didn't make the team. For you, what are some things you tried to do in the lead up to ensure that you got it done on the day and like had that X factor?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard because some things you really just like can't prepare or help yourself for, like obviously like falls and things like of that nature. You can't really help, but there definitely was also a lot of other stuff that like I feel like did not go well last year, not even including the fall at the end. Like I feel like just that whole kind of me, I was definitely like so insanely nervous and just did not have much confidence in myself or my ability. I definitely like psyched myself out just like looking at the line and seeing, all these insane women that I've looked up to. So I feel like I worked on a lot of those types of things from that race that helped me a lot this year and just kind of, knowing that I belong, trusting the training that I've had for the past year, and just trusting, where I am. And yeah, I feel like that definitely was like one of the biggest things that helped me this past year.
If you didn't feel it, please let me know and I will revert the question. But if you have felt imposter syndrome on these lines or like looking at these ladies that you've idolized throughout the years, how have you overcome that to the point of feeling that confidence when you step on the line? Not diminishing your competitors, but more so like, I'm at the same level and I can compete here. This is a race. Anyone can compete for these 3 spots or to win in general. Doesn't matter the race.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely have felt imposter syndrome on the line more times than I can count. And honestly, I still do. I don't know if that's really going to change, a ton in the future, but I feel like a few things that have helped me a lot are just like repeating a lot of like small little mantras before races, just like reminding myself that I can do this, like I belong here. I've done things that have prepared me for this moment. And I'm just as like qualified and ready to be here as anyone else on this line. Sometimes I feel like it's a little more of like do I actually believe that? I don't know, but I'm just gonna tell myself, kind of fake it till you make it. And honestly, that's helped a lot. And yeah, so I just kind of repeat a lot of that stuff, especially on the line, especially even just like weeks, or like the week at least, like leading up to the race. Like I actually have started like making my home screen a few of those mantras. So I look at it every time I see my phone, like that week leading into the race. And it just like, the more times I tell myself it and the more times I think it in my head, like the more I'm going to believe it. And yeah.
It seems like at every level of your career, you rise to the occasion. You come into high school, you rise to the occasion, do some things on paper that have never been done before in the state of, I was going to say in the state of the U.S. By state, I don't mean a state. I mean like the U.S. as a whole, setting national
Yeah.
records, winning a U20 world title. I think you either won one or you were part of a team. Or am I mixing you
I
and
got
Roisin?
third at
Yeah, I mix you and
U20s.
Roisin
Rasheen
with
won.
everything.
Yeah, it's okay.
Rose to the occasion there. And then in college, you come to Stanford, win NCAA titles, set records for Stanford, like all sorts of things. And then even though you're not a pro yet, like going to that like pro level at US championships and whatnot, like coming into the trials, obviously making the team. And then even going to the world stage at the Olympics, you rise to the occasion, make the world final, or the Olympic final here. What would you attribute that to, and how have you rose to the occasion at every single level? Because most athletes, they hit a point where it's like it's just the gap is too much, and for you it's like no gap seems too much. You're like, oh, we got it, we're good. I'll rise to the occasion.
um Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a hard question because I feel like, yeah, I feel like externally or like on paper, it seems like I have risen to the occasion. And I guess I have in a way, but I guess in my mind, it feels a lot scarier and harder than it may seem like it has been. Um, I feel like, honestly, the biggest thing for me has, like, as I've gotten older and like as I've done more in the sport, like, yes, my standards and like kind of, I don't know, perception of success has changed a lot. Like, the better I do, the higher my goals seem to get. And like, I just like kind of keep trying to chase those goals. But I feel like also while I'm doing that, the more I've done in the sport, the more I've been like, I don't know, trying to focus a lot on more me as like outside of just being a runner and outside of what I've done in the sport, which I feel like in high school was a lot harder for me. I feel like I like placed my whole identity in running and like, I don't know, kind of just like saw no other world other than like my running world and like how I did on the track. But I feel like as I've gotten older and just like through college and through all the highs and lows, like I've really started to focus on, you know, obviously the fact that running is like a huge part of my life and a huge part of my identity, but it's not like my whole identity. And by having that like balance in my life and balance in my identity, I feel like I've been able to rise to these occasions because like I've never placed so much pressure on each of those races. Like most times when I'm doing well, it's because like I'm not like fully like I need to do this, I need to do this, like placing all of my worth in that one race. So yeah, it's kind of funny that like, yeah, the less I've kind of placed running as like, my full identity, the better I've done. But yeah, for some reason that's just what works best for me.
Juliet, I think a lot of people, I've heard that a lot on the podcast, and I think a lot of listeners agree, and they look at someone like you and they're like, well, yeah, like that sounds awesome, but they don't know where to start from detaching themselves from the sport and working on that identity piece, making themselves a more full person. Where would you recommend someone starts to add other pieces to their identity outside of just the sport of running?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that has helped me a lot, in kind of like a simple way, is just like being present in like any given moment, like whatever I'm doing. And I think that's helped me because in high school, like I would be in class and I'd be thinking about running. I'd be trying to sleep and I'd be thinking about running. I'd be, doing all these other things and like always thinking about running. And I feel like when I got to college, I like really tried to practice like being in the moment and like being present in like whatever I was doing. Like if I'm in class, like I'm thinking about class. If I'm hanging out with my friends, like I'm thinking about hanging out with my friends. Like obviously on the track, when I'm running, I'm thinking about running. But then like, when I'm sleeping, I'm thinking about resting and like no more, thinking about running. So kind of like balancing all of those moments in my life, and just like in day-to-day life, like just really focusing on what I'm doing at that moment just helps, running not consume every minute of every day, which has helped me a lot be able to just like separate, all of these different parts of me. And also just kind of focusing on other things that like bring me joy. Like obviously like running is really fun for me and like it brings me a lot of joy and happiness, but like so do a lot of other things like hanging out with friends, watching movies, being outside, going on walks, like all those other things. So I feel like focusing on all of that also has helped me kind of, see so much more than just like the running in my life.
Oh, so good. So good. This is like a advice column with Juliette Whittaker. I love it. I feel like you have a trademark, and that trademark is when you cross the finish line and you're really happy with the result, the hands go to the face, the mouth opens, you're like, what just happened? Take me through that moment when you made the Olympic team.
Oh my gosh, that was, yeah, I mean, I always have that, moment at the end of a race, but I feel like after the trials was just the biggest kind of example of that moment. But yeah, I don't even know. That whole race, I feel like I just kind of like blacked out in my mind. Like I just like was not thinking. I was just like running. And I remember like coming home on that last like 100 stretch, like I felt like I was having so much like deja vu because so many times like leading up to that, like for mainly the week leading up to that race, but also even like before that, like I had just been like replaying the race in my mind, and like I kept picturing myself, like coming in that last like 100 and crossing the line in like Olympic qualifying like position, either of the top three. And so when I was like actually in the race and like that was happening, I remember thinking in my head, like, oh my gosh, like this is actually happening. Like I have been dreaming of this, I've been envisioning this, and like here it is. And I remember like honestly by the end of the race I kept repeating in my mind like stay up, like don't fall, because I was like also having slight deja vu to that race, and I was like, just finish the race, stay on your feet, and get to that position. And yeah, when I crossed the line, I remember like looking to both sides because I was like, okay, like, am I crazy? Like, I think I was in third, but like, I don't know. I wasn't thinking much. So like, I remember looking to both sides and seeing Nia and Allie. And then like, I still didn't believe myself. So then I had to look up onto the board, and I was just like waiting for the names to appear. And like, when I saw my name like in the third position, I was just like, so happy but so in shock, and I was just like, what is this? Like, pinch me, this feels like a dream. And I remember looking up at my family and they were also happy. Like my mom was crying, I think. Like there was just so much emotion, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
Obviously, the minute that you make an Olympic team as a sophomore in college, like, and you can speak to this, I'm sure there's already been pressure in high school with how good you were, and then pressure in college. But the minute you make an Olympic team, Stanford talks about it, Team USA talks about it, friends and family talk about it, everyone you know talks about it, and you get a lot more eyeballs because you become this kind of even bigger of a figure. And then you go to the Olympics, and then it kind of becomes, a bigger scene. NBC tunes in, everyone around the world tunes in, and then you make an Olympic final, and it's like, wow, this is crazy, this is historic. How did you deal with all the added and extra pressure this summer? And can you speak to the element of, I don't know, your 2021? Like, it's kind of unnatural. 200 years ago, this was not 20 and 21-year-olds, like, did not have millions of eyeballs on them. How do you deal with it, and how do you get through it?
Yeah, it's definitely very tough, and I feel like it showed a lot this past summer, or like I felt it more this past summer than I ever had before, just because, yeah, like you said, there were just so many more people kind of tuning into my races than ever before. Even just like, people I hadn't talked to from like middle school and high school and elementary school, and like all these people, saying that they were watching me and texting me a ton, and it was obviously so exciting because it was just like, like obviously very like validating to have so many people seem like they care so much about how I did, but it was also, so much more pressure because I was like, oh my gosh, like not only am I just like running for myself, but now I feel like I'm running for all these other people who like believe so highly in me. And I was like, I just like want to do well, for myself, but also just for them, and not like, disappoint them or let them down, which obviously, many of them reminded me like, you could not disappoint us. Like, we're so happy that you're even there. But still, like in the back of my mind, I obviously, wanted it to do well for them. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of added pressure, and kind of just like external like expectation. Usually like I have my own kind of internal expectation, but I feel like this past summer was more so kind of the external pressure that I was getting. And yeah, I don't know. It was definitely really hard. I'm trying to think of like some things that I kind of kept trying to remind myself. I feel like the main thing was just like reminding, I mean, my family did a really good job, honestly, of reminding me myself this, but also just kind of doing it myself. Was just like how much, they all loved me and were proud of me, no matter what. Like whether I won or whether I got last place, like I assure you, like my family probably would have like reacted in the same exact way. And honestly, that helped me a ton. Like they were just so excited that I was even there, and like, like I mean, like with or without the race, like I had a whole extended family come to Paris, and we had like an amazing time. So like, with or without, the running part, like it was still just like a really special memory for my family. So kind of just like remembering that, yeah, they were kind of just going to be there for me and happy for me, no matter what. I feel like kind of helped that external pressure.
Everyone dreams of making the Olympics, and if they say they don't, they're lying. Go back to 5-year-old self. Um, But I think so few people realize what it takes to make it, and they might, be listening to this podcast and kind of just like write you off or the other Olympians I talked to as lucky or having talent, or they just made it and they don't think much about it. I'd love to hear about and give you the time to put some words to like what it actually takes to make the Olympics and the long journey and dedication, even back as a freshman in high school that has led up to this point, not just this season, but the years of hard work, of going to bed early to sleep, of foam rolling when you didn't want to. Can you give some words to the sacrifices you've had to make to be in this position, to make teams and play seventh in the world?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. More sacrifices than I can count, honestly. Yeah, I feel like, especially with the Olympics as well, I feel like most people, you know, kind of like they're like, oh, okay, like you must have been like working for this, for the past like few weeks, few months, maybe year. But it's like, no, like we've been thinking about this, since the last Olympics or even before that. Like a long time of just like, years of just kind of every decision and every choice kind of being made towards this goal, which for me, it wasn't like complete, like, I don't know, like I wasn't in high school thinking like, okay, I'm gonna choose to, skip out on this social event so I can go train tonight for the 2024 Paris Olympics. Like I wasn't thinking about that. Like I didn't even like at that moment, I was just kind of seeing where running was going to take me. If I was to the Olympics, amazing, but I probably wouldn't have even expected it to be this early on. So it wasn't like that, like kind of intentional about the Olympics itself, but like it was every choice and every like decision was made with like the focus of like me getting better at running, and like that did end up ultimately becoming the Olympics, so it did have to do with that. And I feel like in high school it was definitely really hard because in college like it's a lot easier to kind of like make these sacrifices and do all these things that like maybe you don't really feel like doing, but you probably should, because you have like a team that like all kind of has that same mindset. But in high school it was a lot harder because like you know, my high school team was very like small, not many people, like people kind of just did cross country and track just like for the fun of it, and like, didn't really have like these big goals within the sport like I did. Which made it a lot harder when I had to like skip out on, like, I remember I had to miss prom my senior year because it was like the weekend of Penn relays, and like no one really understood that, and it was really hard because it was just like, yeah, like I have to miss it, and they were like, but why? Like it's just a track meet. And so a lot of those moments were really tough. But I feel like now that I've gone to college, like it's a lot easier to kind of make those decisions because it's like, okay, I'm not alone. I have a bunch of other girls who are kind of making these same sacrifices because we all have this big goal in the end. And yeah, so I feel like just over the past few years, sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but yeah,
All good.
basically, definitely a lot of sacrificing, a lot of hard workouts. And I feel like even, I mean, my coach has kind of been like focusing on, like reminding me of this goal for like kind of the past 2 years, like even freshman year, like a lot of the kind of choices that we were making had to do with like, this end goal of like being in contention for an Olympic spot. Like even, 2 years ago when it was like, 2022, and like I wasn't even really thinking about the Olympics a ton then, but he was just kind of, definitely like reminding me of it. And honestly, it helped a ton. Like I knew every decision was just like a little piece to the puzzle. And it was like being put towards this like end goal of making this team. Um, so yeah, definitely like making the Olympics, obviously like a lot of talent goes into it, but a lot of like hard work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of all these other things that are not as exciting as talent, kind of go into it. But yeah, ultimately it's what gets you there, I guess.
What advice would you give to a freshman or sophomore girl in high school, or anyone listening who has a massive dream that they don't really see the steps towards getting there, but they still have that dream and that goal? What would you say to them in terms of, the journey to get there and just the process of chasing after a big dream and goal and seeing it through?
Yeah. I mean, for one, I'd say just like never be scared of a daunting like goal or dream. Like it's obviously, hard. Sometimes, you have these big goals and you might not feel like it, really could come true, or other people might be giving their insight, and not seeming like they think it could come true. But I would say just never like be scared of that. Like big goals are like exciting. Like it's like you get to see what you can do, and you can never reach that if you never actually really think that you could do it. So yeah, for one, I'd say like keep those big goals. Like don't be afraid of it. Don't be scared of how big it might be. You never know what could happen. And I feel like my past year has honestly been a testament to that, because I feel like I have been one who has been pretty scared of like setting goals, especially like saying them out loud. Like that always scares me, because I'm like, oh, but like what if I don't get it? But like what if you do? And I feel like this past year like has really showed me like I 2 years ago, maybe I would have never said like I want to make the Olympic team. And this past year, like I've really like kind of like said it and thought it a lot. Like after last year's race at USA's in 2023, when I fell, I remember like reflecting a lot on the flight back home. And I like typed up in my notes app, like this year I fell like steps from the finish, but next year I'm making this team. And like obviously that was an insanely scary goal, and like probably didn't make much practical sense given that I had like fallen that year and like didn't even make the final. And like to other people that might seem like a giant jump, but it was just like a big goal that I had, and I finally like didn't feel scared to like say it or think it. And ultimately it ended up happening. So like yeah, make those big goals. Like you never know what could happen. Um but yeah, I feel like I was gonna add something else, but now I'm forgetting. So we can leave it at that.
There's some great stuff in there. So if it comes to you later, we can circle back on this. Let's
Okay.
talk about the future. How do you feel like, this past year, and honestly, like past few years, I want to give flowers to the other aspects of your career, which are ultimately insane. Like the NCAA is so competitive. To win an NCAA title is crazy. How do you feel like this has set you up for the years to come? And just what's your overall mindset around the sport? Doesn't even have to be outcomes, but just like, how are you showing up to practice? What's your general disposition and mindset towards your running, and how far you can go within this pursuit?
Yeah. I mean, like the biggest thing that this past year has kind of like showed me, or like made me want to like realize, is just like obviously, this past year, um, a ton of people have talked to me about it and asked me questions about it, and like it was a very exciting year with like a lot of amazing outcomes and accomplishments. Um, but I feel like I was missing a lot of like the joy in the process as well. I was kind of doing all these workouts and doing all these runs, and I was like, oh, like it'll all be worth it, for this end goal. And like most times, like, yeah, the end goal did make it better, but also other times it was like, yeah, okay, like I won nationals, but like now what? Like it kind of like, I guess it didn't fulfill me as much as I was expecting it to. Because I thought like, you know, getting these certain goals and getting these certain, accomplishments would kind of like just like make the whole experience, amazing, and like what it was. And like it was good, for a little bit of time, but I feel like one thing that I was missing this year was like, what about like all of the joy and all of the happiness like in the journey to get to this moment. And so I feel like this next year, instead of focusing so much on like accomplishments and outcomes, because I've already kind of I did that last year, and like it didn't, yeah, kind of fulfill me as much as I wanted it to or expected it to. So I feel like this coming year I just kind of want to focus more on just like the journey and the process, and just like finding love and finding joy in the sport, through the highs, through the lows, kind of through everything. And yeah, just kind of running like as a happier version of myself.
Question I came across a few months ago that I love, that I want to ask you. If the next 5 years is a chapter in your life, what's this chapter about?
Oh, that's so hard. I mean, kind of going back to what I just said, I feel like just like finding love and joy in the process. Yeah, kind of, I mean, definitely like in running, but also just in life. This past year has been very exciting on paper. But it's definitely been also just like a really challenging year, just like mentally and emotionally. Yeah, it's been really hard. So I feel like as much as I want to find kind of love and joy in the process of running, I also just want to find love and joy in the process of just like life. So yeah, I feel like these next 5 years,
She's a
maybe that's.
philosopher. Ooh, that's some good stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just like,
No,
dang,
no,
that's
you're
good.
good.
It's a good line right there.
Thank you.
That's like the type of thing you'd like. I don't have Pinterest, so don't blame me, people listening. But that's the type of thing you'd open Pinterest and it would be like a mood board. Like, also goes for life. Juliette,
Yeah.
closing out this conversation. On a lighter note, although this whole podcast has been decently light, I'd like to think. Let's talk about fall. We're in October, cross season, off the grass, off the track, or it could be cross. Maybe you're looking forward to a trip. What's something you're looking forward to in the upcoming weeks and months, as well as what's like Juliette Whittaker's like fall mood board, like favorite fall drink, movie, anything
Ooh.
fall. Hit me with it.
Ooh. I like this. Okay. One thing I'm looking forward to is definitely Thanksgiving break. I'm excited to go home. I'm gonna see like a lot of my extended family, cousins, aunt, uncles, um, grandma, siblings, parents, kind of everyone. So I'm very excited for that. And also just excited to go back home to the East Coast because one thing about fall, like I love fall and like I always have, but it doesn't feel like fall here at all. Like last week was literally 105 degrees, like more days than I can count. And it's just been so hot and the trees aren't changing colors like I love when they do at home and like all these things that I'm kind of missing out on. So I'm very excited to go back to Maryland over Thanksgiving break and kind of get to feel the fall kind of vibes. But my fall mood board is hard because it is different here. Like I feel like at home it'd be like, oh, my fall drink would be like a hot latte, but here it's still ice because it's not cold enough at all to have a hot drink. um, let's see. I don't even know what's a good like I love like horror movies. I grew up like my family, we would
Interesting.
always watch horror movies and especially in like the fall and like spooky season. So definitely a lot of horror movies. I really want to go to a haunted house this year, so I might try and get the team to all go. So that would definitely be on my little fall mood board. Um, but yeah, other than that, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Again, it's hard to do much like fall stuff. We might be going to like a little pumpkin patch with the team, which will be fun. So yeah, trying to get into the fall spirit, even though it doesn't really feel like fall outside.
Well, Juliette, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. Always a fun time learning from you and hearing the behind the scenes stories from all of your success. Truly so excited to see you flourish this year and can't wait to see all the things you'll accomplish in the years to come. So keep crushing it. And we'll be here to break it down next year when you kill it again.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And yes, I'm excited to come back on in a year.